Thanks, everyone, and welcome everyone in the audience today to the 5 o'clock session of the Global Entrepreneurship Week panel discussions. If you weren't able to join us for the other two sessions that have happened so far, yesterday we heard from Aaron Lewis, gave our kickoff event. He talked about the history of sphere breaks and how he got here and some of the lessons he's learned here in Erie. And then earlier today, we heard from some earlier stage entrepreneurs, some college students, some people that are just getting started on new businesses and new careers. And then today we're going to hear from some people that are a little bit further down the line in their entrepreneurial journey. And then tomorrow we'll have two panels, one at 12 called How Entrepreneurs Can Grow Together in Recovering Cities. And then at 5 p.m., we'll be having the Erie's Entrepreneurial Ecosystem panel, where we'll have some stakeholders from the local ecosystem discussing about what sort of resources there are available to entrepreneurs that are interested in growing their business here. And then right now, we're going to be hearing from some, I already said that. So I'm going to hand it over to each of these fine people on the screen to talk a little bit about what they're up to and what their businesses are. And then we'll get into a couple questions, about 5, and have some discussion. And then at the end, we'll take some questions from the audience using the Q&A function. So if at any point during this you have any questions that come to mind, feel free to pop those in there, and we'll all be able to see it and address those at the end. So I'll hand it over to Sean first, and then we'll go to Carl, Catherine, and Rain.
Jordan, would you like me to just introduce myself or answer a particular question?
No, so just tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Sure. So I'm Sean Fedorko. I've spent the last 6 years building and running Radius Co-work, the city of Erie's co-working space and small business incubator, mostly for freelancers, remote workers, small businesses here in the community, a few startups. City Grows, actually headquartered here in Erie, so good to see Catherine. There are a lot of different kinds of business in the world, and if you had to identify ours, you would probably call it social entrepreneurship. So we have a community impact, and we accomplish that community impact by running a profitable business. So it's been really great. We've had a lot of impact here in the city of Erie. It's really passionate work. It's not the most profitable work, and we can get into that later, but it's one of the, I think, most fulfilling ways that you can enter into an entrepreneurial venture is to try to have a mission in your community that you care about.
All right, now we'll hear from Carl.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carl Nicolia, and I'm president of PS Energy. PS Energy is a fast-growing, agile startup located right here in Erie, Pennsylvania on 12th Street. Our patented products and IoT solutions, world-class service, and combustion expertise has really differentiated PS Energy as a leading partner with global steel, aluminum, and heat treating companies. Our leading edge products and services deliver massive productivity for our customers, whose end products really affect every industry worldwide. Our team was formed in 2013, but we remain very startup minded with an intense focus on the customer. We've really grown in terms of people. We have about 14 people on the team now. That was pre-COVID. We have a few less today temporarily, but hopefully they'll be back and up and running. So that's really the overview. I'm sure we'll get into more as we go through questions.
I will go to Catherine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Generakis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of City Grows. We are a no-code permitting and licensing platform for local governments. We began our connection to Erie as part of the Erie Innovation District first class of the accelerator. So thanks. It's Jordan's fault that we are an Erie company now. We work both with the city and county of Erie now, as well as with governments across Pennsylvania. So we are a remote first team with our HQ based at Radius. Largest concentration of our team is in Erie. Customer success and sales are based in Erie. Yeah, we are helping the city of Erie. If you've licensed your dog online, if you haven't licensed your dog, please go to the city of Erie and license your dog online. We started that this year. If you've requested a bulky item pickup, or if you were a restaurant this year and used our restaurant reopening workflow during COVID to make sure that your employees and staff were safe, that's some of the stuff that we're, and restaurant goers were safe. Those are some of the things that we're doing for governments in the Erie region and Pennsylvania and across the country.
And last but not least, we'll go to Rain.
Hi, everyone. Rain Takahashi, the founder of Jonton. So we're a software company actually based in Toronto, Canada. We went through the Secure Erie Accelerator, similar to Catherine, in 2018, I believe it was. So yeah, one of the alumni from that. And our company is a software company that enables insurance companies to distribute short-term insurance policies. So we did Canada's first hourly insurance policy with AIG. We have various partners in the US that do short-term insurance with us, everything from events to dog walking to snow plowing to gig workers like Uber drivers and Grubhub drivers and stuff like that. So our software is what's powering the short-term insurance for our insurance partners.
Awesome, thanks guys. So now we'll hop into some questions and some discussion. But first, to give a little bit of more flesh to the story of your business, how/when did you know that it wasn't just an idea? What made you make the jump from idea to business? And then I'll just open up the floor. Anyone can.
Well, I'm not shy, Jordan, so I'll jump right in. So, I'm kind of a little bit older than the rest of the crew here. So this is a second career for me. I don't think so. So when we started out with an idea, and basically it became a business when we looked at the market and said, is there enough here to make it happen? I think we've all heard it before, right? They're all good ideas. You just have to execute, and then you have to have a market. And so once we found that there was a sizable market in big steel, big aluminum, and heat treating, we set out to go attack that. And so it started as an idea, of course, but as soon as you said, "Hey, there's enough here to make it interesting," that's when it became something to go after.
Yeah, I guess I can jump in. So for me, it was a lot more basic. It was just general feedback from random people that I didn't even know. So obviously, your friends and family are going to always be like, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea." But as I was sharing my idea with random people in the startup ecosystem of Toronto, and even insurance brokers, insurance people in the insurance industry, every time I told them, their eyes would light up, and after a while, I was just like, "Oh, maybe I'm onto something." And that was when I really started to realize, okay, maybe it's just not an idea. Maybe I should give it a shot. And that's kind of what led to the next steps.
For me, I didn't set out to start a business or didn't set out to run a business. This was a side project. At the time I launched this, I had a full-time position. I didn't even plan on staying in the city nearly as long as I have, but it evolved over time. It captured more and more of my attention. There was more and more opportunity we discovered. And after about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I was like, oh, this is my full-time job now. I do this. So it really just evolved. You don't always start with a fully formed plan. Sometimes something you love doing just continues to grow until it captures all of your attention.
Yeah, I think for us, my partner Steven he's like this genius technologist developer person, and he's the kind of person who saw he had a question around public data for building permits, he is the kind of guy who on a weekend like builds a crazy web scraper to like solve his own personal problem. And then when people started responding to that solution, like way off scale of what they should, like all these different cities were like, we want one of those. And he was like, no, 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 this is not a real solution to this problem. And City Grows is sort of the answer to how to actually solve the problem of not having good public access to data. It's collect it in a rational way and then allow governments to process data easily. We're actually, where it's a business is that we're helping governments like dramatically improve their efficiency and reduce their costs and generate more revenue. But similar to Carl, we're like, look, this is of course a great idea. Nobody doesn't think that government couldn't be more efficient and work better, right? But we looked at the market and saw that there was a gap in what other sort of competitor-ish companies were doing. And we saw a market segment opportunity that we saw was underserved. We did some evaluation to think about like how much we wanted to spend and what we thought we could charge and what would make sense in the market, and then how that compared to competitors, and saw that we could do something that was really advantageous for governments, and we thought would also result in a really profitable business. And so that's when you're like, no, we're not a nonprofit that's going to go get grants. We're actually a business that can scale. And everybody makes those decisions in different ways based on exactly what their business is and what their target is for how they want to grow and what kind of a company they want to build. But that's the baseline, right? And Stephen actually started before. He and I had worked together on several other projects, and he like wrote me in and was like, that was when he was like, oh, I need, this is not just a piece of technology, it's a business. I need someone else to help me make it a real business. So.
That's an interesting transition. So all of you have grown the business to now include other team members. For those in the audience that are either business owners or looking to start a business, can you talk us through some of your thoughts and strategies for how you've handled either talent acquisition or growing your team? What's been your approach? What have you seen success? Where have you seen failures? Talk a little bit about that.
So we've been in Erie our whole time, and since inception in 2013, and we've really taken advantage of the university's structure here, and the number of universities. Obviously, we slant towards engineers, and we've hired quite a few. I took some notes here just to be sure. So we currently have 6 Penn State alums as employees and 1 Gannon alum as an employee. That's me. But we've sponsored 5 different senior design teams from both Gannon and Barron. We've had many interns over the past several years from Gannon and Barron. And the intern pool, all the folks that worked with, that are currently working with us now, the new hires, probably work with us for at least a year before they came out of school. So really using that internship program to help develop people, it's a great way to interview people for a year or a summer, or and we get interviewed too. They decide if this is the culture that they want to be in. So taking advantage of the university structure that we have here in town has been really big and really important for us.
I would say for us that we sort of take the same approach to hiring and staffing that we do to like everything about the business, honestly, which is sort of like test and iterate, right? And we've learned that a little bit the hard way with some, like we did some of the startup things, like we probably made a couple of like not the best choice early hires, but we were able to course correct pretty quickly, right? So I have a friend who's like a much more seasoned entrepreneur than I am. And he was just like, yeah, I'm not that great at hiring, which means I had to get really good at firing people, right? So you either can like really hone your hiring skills, or you can be okay with being like, we have a real trial period and like, it's a mutual fit, right? Like that's true. We have had success finding good folks in Erie, particularly on like the sales, customer support, marketing side. We've definitely been a little bit more challenged on the tech side. Like I'm super excited for some of the work that Sean and like just the whole ecosystem is clearly maturing like year over year in terms of like the talent base in Erie, which is cool. You know, I think you have to be realistic when you pick the stack. If you're a tech product, if you pick the stack for your tech product, like what that's going to imply, like if you're building a hardware product, you know, like what you're going to need from engineering and be realistic about what that's going to mean for your hiring, right? But that's kind of our overall philosophy, right? Is test and evaluate. But
yeah, particularly for like new companies, both within Radius and with many of the companies that have worked here, I've seen so many examples of how the first hire makes or breaks. I mean, it really determines how quickly you can move. You know, one of the examples, a great guy here in the city who runs a company called Apex Drop, his first hire was the first intern he ever had. And she ended up becoming one of the vice presidents at his company. She was, I mean, stellar. They hired her full time before she even graduated. Her senior year, was a rock star. Without that particular hire, you know, I don't know that they accelerate nearly as quickly as they did. I know at Radius, our first employee was so incredible. She's known to members who joined well after she had left, and is like the gold standard for how to run the company. And in fact, probably made it possible for us to envision a whole new scale of growth that we hadn't otherwise envisioned, because just those new skills and talents that came to the team. So just emphasizing how much, whatever metric you use to get that hire right, getting that hire right can really accelerate you.
Yeah, from my end, it's part of the process in the sense that if you're starting a business and you can't convince somebody to come work for you either for free or below market value, because that I mean, chance of you being able to pay someone as a new entrepreneur their market wage is pretty slim. So if you can't convince someone to come work for you and your idea or whatever it is you're trying to do, and they're your first hire, you might want to reevaluate what you're working on. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad idea. It's just you need to get better at articulating it, and you need to get people excited, because if they're not excited to come work for you, I mean, that in itself is a big red flag, I think. So it's I echo everyone else's what they said, where yeah, first hire is important, but you have to make sure that they're excited and that you can actually bring them on. So yeah, all part of the process.
Yeah, I just want to follow up, Catherine, with what you said. You know, I agree, and Jordan knows it. We started another company that's more software based, right? Called for now Glass, but we'll see if that sticks around. But but I've been really pleased with the people that we've been getting from Penn State and from Gannon. Super smart, talented young folks. Now, you know, and they've developed some, I think, very amazing products and services for our customers. And, you know, I remember early on, we needed some software help. And I called Sean and I said, hey, Sean, I need some software help. And he said, well, we got this group of people that meet, you know, it's like a code club or something, right? Sean, I don't remember what it is. And we went there and we found this amazing guy that was a great fit for our business that we paid as a contractor. So, look, we have a long way to go in Erie, but I do think the more and more tech-based companies that we can get rolling here, the better that talent pool is going to be. And when we think about just 120 miles south of here sits Google, Amazon, I mean, major tech hubs. 120 miles isn't that far, right? So I think we can, as we begin to create more exciting opportunities in the tech space, I think we'll be able to get some of those folks to migrate north, and maybe even a few Rain to migrate south and set up shop here in Erie. I'm really excited. That's what excites me most about what all of these cohorts are bringing and people that are sticking around. That's what excites me most. We can change the complexion of work in Erie to be much more tech based.
Well, I think you just have to look at the difference, right, between the accelerator this cycle and when we started, right? So the year that Rain and I were in the program, all the companies, Jordan, right, started somewhere else, right? And this year, there's like a ton of you know what I mean? Like there's a ton of Erie-based startups in it. Like it's already happening, right? Which is super, super cool. So.
Agreed. And yeah, I mean, I think we have to, it's really up to us, I think, as founders to create environments. You know, one of the things we like to talk about here is just fail faster, right? I mean, we've got a pile of printed circuit boards and components that are just broke and wrong and whatever, burnt up. But the faster we fail, the quicker we get product to the customer, and in that real life environment, the better off we are. And it just snowballs then. It just snowballs.
That's another great transition. Thank you guys. Sean and I were talking earlier about some of the different types of business that are present here, and how entrepreneurship isn't always this, let's go start a tech company and start developing apps and stuff, but it really has a lot of different flavors. I think Sean can speak to it a little bit better, so I'll hand it over to him.
Yeah, you know, it's one of the points that we're pretty emphatic about here at Radius. That's why we say we're not like a startup incubator. You know, entrepreneurship can be lots of things. You can create lots of different typologies here, but what I would suggest is think about it kind of three ways. Like there's a growth business. I'm going to build something and my goal is to grow it. Growth could look like scaling in 5 years and exiting. It could look like 50 years of continuous expansion, but it's growth. That is like a lifestyle business where like, I want to build a business because I want to live the life I want to live. I want to work on the projects I want to work on. I want to make the money I want to make. And I'm going to build this business. It could be anything. It could be a software development company. It could be a bar. I mean, it really could be anything. But the goal is to facilitate your lifestyle as the founder, owner, leader. And then the last is kind of like a social entrepreneurship enterprise where the mission's not really to maximize your personal income. The mission's not necessarily to like grow as much as possible. The mission is whatever impact you want to have. And so that's what Radius is we drive social impact. The goal is to maximize that impact, not necessarily maximize my personal compensation. And we structure our work rhythms, how long we hire people for cycles, the people we hire, all around that. And so like deciding what kind of business you want to lead and how your life is most complemented by the structure of that business is really important. Because if you build a business that is really in conflict with the way you want to live, you're just not going to have the endurance to see it through. The challenges just won't align. And at some point, you'll have to make a choice. And so making sure that the life you want to live and the business style that you choose are compatible is really important at the outset.
That's a great point, Sean. I mean, I think everyone that's been doing this for a little while will tell you that, you know, it's not, you have to like it because there's a lot of work to be done. And, you know, it's in no way a get rich quick scheme or anything like that, right? I mean, there's lots of work to be done. And, you know, I like to think of our venture as at least PS Energy has been set up to grow and hire people in Erie. I mean, that's our goal. That was what we set out to do. And I'm really happy that we were able to do that. You know, COVID has put a little bit of a kink in it this year, you know, but, you know, I think all of those types of businesses that you described are super important to the overall ecosystem. And, you know, we can't just say we want to be only this type of business, right? I think all of those are super, super important.
All right. So that brings in up the next topic of COVID. It's sort of the elephant in the room in every discussion that's been happening for the past about 8 months. Exactly. How has this impacted your business? And what pivots have you had to make? What tips do you have for someone that might be interested in making that brave leap to start a business right now, like we heard about this afternoon. Just sort of talk to that, the unfortunate truth of the current situation.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I mean, a lot of big companies have come out of recessions and negative economic situations, so it shouldn't discourage anyone. I feel like it's really only up from here. So if you're thinking of starting a business and it makes sense in the current climate, definitely don't hesitate. Um, yeah, like I think even Amazon came out of a recession. Yeah, don't get discouraged just because it's doom and gloom on the news. There's plenty of opportunity. It just means the opportunities have changed. So what may have been a good opportunity, I don't know, a restaurant 12 months ago, it probably you don't want to start a restaurant right now, but there's plenty of other things out there that you can definitely challenge yourself with.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for us, probably like some other tech companies, like everything, even for government, right, which was having to respond in real time to COVID, we basically saw like two directions. So either our clients started doing a lot more right away because they had to adopt, for some of them, to remote work for the very first time, or they were pretty paralyzed for a little while. I will be honest and say it's not bad as a tech company when your developers are locked in their houses for like 6 months. Like they get a lot of work done. Not gonna lie, we built a lot of features. But I would rather there was no COVID and my business was having a worse time, right? But we have to react to the world we're in, right? So we were always a remote first company. So that was something that we had in place already that made it easier for us to transition into our current world of 2020. We selected that both for flexibility and because I think it allows us to hire the best people no matter where they are, right? And I think, follow up a little bit on what Carl said, I think there will be people who in the short term, like tech people who are working for companies elsewhere based in Erie, who will then eventually transition to working for Erie-based companies, right? Because now most technologists can be anywhere and work. And so lower cost of living, like, you sell your house in San Francisco and move to Erie, not a shabby choice there, right? So, and you might end up opening a boba shop, as one person who did that, who we all know did, just FYI, speaking of entrepreneurs. Anyhow, I think the other thing we're seeing though is that COVID is sort of accelerating trends that were already in place in our sector, right? So things that were already happening are happening faster, and there's urgency that wasn't there before for moving to digital. And I think that's creating challenges, but also opportunities for folks in all different sectors, right? So I also say, like, I started I had a consulting firm. My partner did too. We both had consulting firms before we started a product-based startup company, right? We each worked at startups before we did this. I think there's like a natural progression of getting more and more comfortable with being like taking a riskier and riskier bet in your business choices, right? Like when I started my consulting firm, I had income coming in right away, and I couldn't, at that point in my life, I couldn't have done it any other way. When we started this business, we both made the decision that like we probably weren't going to pay ourselves very much for a chunk of time, which turned out to be correct, right? So like you're at different points in your life with different needs and different requirements allow you to make different decisions about how much risk you're willing to take, which can help to determine some of the questions around what Sean was saying about what type of business you start, right? But I firmly believe that, like, especially for like women folks in the audience, right? Like there are fewer of us who are starting tech companies for sure, right? But like in general, women are entrepreneurs across all levels of business, right? So like just find your model and go, right? Like find your role model and look for somebody, because there is somebody out there who you can look up to and can be a mentor. I think if you have even the slightest inclination, like think like do it. At least try it. Like try it on the side. Like you can dip your toe in the water in a lot of ways to see how it feels.
Yeah. To respond to your question, Jordan, about COVID, for our business, we are basically hard goods based, right? So autos, airplanes, heat treating. And so when we shut the auto industry down for a month and we stopped making airplanes, it hurt pretty bad. And, we are, unfortunately, we still have several people on furlough. We have not recovered. We'll probably leave the year down significantly year over year, which is difficult because as we came into the first quarter, we were still on a pretty strong growth trend. And you just see it come to a complete stop. April was literally zero, so it's tough to come back from that. But, we're holding our own in terms of pivoting. We looked at what other muscle can we build during this time. So we added services, we added some different offerings to what we do, so we can do more when we get to one customers or the other. We actually had an open purchase order with ArcelorMittal, which is the largest steel company in the world, for about 7 months, and we couldn't go to their site. They had us blocked. We couldn't travel between states, and so COVID was a pretty big impact. But I think we try to control the controllable, right? You can only control what's available to you, and try to guide the ship the best that you can. But we'll come out of it stronger on the other end. I think our surprise is that it has lasted this long. Honestly, that's been the biggest surprise for us. Back in May, when you signed up for PPP, you're thinking, oh, this will be great. We'll keep the team around. And now here we are still in October, November, with still some of the team on furlough. So COVID's had a big impact on our business.
And Sean, I've seen some of your thoughts and stuff on Twitter about how this might impact moving forward, especially in your business. I mean, you do this future of work is sort of where you are with co-working and things like that. How have you seen either an impact now, or where do you see the impact moving forward?
Yeah, I think the most interesting impact is, how we, not necessarily Radius's case, but how we're thinking about the future of work broadly. Think about it this way: everybody in the country, everybody in the world, but especially in America, every business has learned how to manage its employees remote or has gone out of business because they didn't figure it out. And every employee has had to learn how to be successful working remote, or at least how to adapt to it. The distribution of labor and resources is tectonically shifted. So, if you're not thinking about how you can hire talent remote wherever they are, wherever the best people are, Catherine's a good example. Some of her talent are here. Some of her talent are with her in San Francisco. Some of the talent are elsewhere in the world. No, okay, there's
nobody else is with me. We're all little atomized units all over the country. Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to think that the nature of distributed businesses has changed, and that's Fortune 500s all the way down to 5 guys. And the nature of labor has changed. It's much more willing and capable of performing well remotely, but so has the nature of consumption. Think of all the people who never in their life were ever going to consider having their groceries delivered, that now do it regularly and will probably never switch back. Many people have changed the way that they consume, the way that they spend, their priorities. And so keeping in mind that COVID didn't just change things for time, and we'll all go back to exactly how it was. The city of New York City, their tourist bureau doesn't expect foreign tourism to return to 2019 levels until 2025, 2026. These are huge shifts in markets. how is your business going to adapt to that? Even if you're just starting it now, how is your business going to be part of that new structure of labor, consumption, demand, and management? Because those are going to be permanent changes, or certainly dramatically influential changes to every industry.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're spot on, Sean. And in some of the changes that we've made. So, I mean, we have a physical product, right? I don't have a press, injection molding press, a sintering oven, a debinding oven at home, right? So we have to go to the office, if you will, or to the factory to manufacture this stuff. But I agree with you, on the service side of things, this is where, taking advantage of the IIoT world or the IoT world and getting data remotely and helping customers serve remotely. That's a huge trend. And that's one of the pivots that we did as we, kind of came through this thing, is say, all right, we're not going to be able to go on site as we would like. So how do we change our business model to be able to see that remotely? And I think we've actually created a much nicer product line now by giving the customer something that they've never had, and that view of combustion anywhere in the world on any furnace in the world. So it's a little of both. It's tough when you have to go actually make something to do it from home, like a physical product, but certainly that trend is here to stay for sure.
Okay, before we get into the next question, I just want to remind everyone in the audience that if you have any questions or anything, feel free to fire those into the Q&A feature. We've already had a couple come across, so but we'll hop into the next one and let some more accrue. So all of you have had experiences in different cities and have had experiences across the country, around the world. Bringing that home to Erie, because you've all now had access or have either been here for a while, what's good about Erie? And then also, what could be improved? Because we're always looking to grow. What are some of the things that you've noticed outside? And then how can we bring that back here?
I mean, I would say our experience has been that like the level of coordination among organizations and sort of major players in the region is really impressive and different from what I've seen in other places, right? So when we came to the accelerator, the fact that reinsurance and the chamber and the city and the universities and all those folks were working together, like not all exactly all the time working on the same thing, but like we're in communication with each other, could sort of think about where the best resource was for young businesses. Like I haven't seen that in other places. Like we've done accelerators in other places. We have, our team is spread out around different parts of the country. Like that level of support and engagement, I think, is really unique. And I grew up in a town that is not that different from Erie in some ways, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and like the same ex-manufacturing, like, kind of went through a rough patch. Bridgeport's patch is still pretty rough. You know what I mean? It's you see the difference when those things aren't in place, I guess. So I think that's something that I really notice.
I call Erie a city for builders. Like I came back from DC. You're in DC, you want to do something, there are 5,000 other people trying to do it. There are two kinds of cities. There are complete cities and there are cities for builders. If you want the best of anything, you can go to Seattle. You got 100 boba tea shops. You got, every kind of brewery you can imagine. You got every kind of experience you can imagine. It's a city full of really a lot of delights. And so it's a great experience. But if you want to build something, chances are it's already been built in Seattle. So if you want to build something of incredible meaning, you really want a lot of runway, Erie's a great place to do it. It's got tons of real estate. It's got town, it's got passion, it's got great infrastructure, it's got great housing. It's got a really passionate community. It's got a great facility for raising a family. So you can have a whole life here. You don't have to bounce once, you it's no longer appropriate for your family. So the city's just like a great foundation to get something started. It's a great place if you want to build. That's really kind of my like love of Erie. Was it allowed me to do something. If I wanted to do what I did here in DC, I would have needed $5 million in the first year. In Erie, oh man, there was nobody doing it. So I just got to like putz around. Nobody stopped me until I figured out how to do it right. And that I think is what's so cool. It's a great welcoming place that'll embrace you if you want to try something new.
Yeah, for us, it was affordability and also the location. So you're roughly an hour from Buffalo, which is on the border of obviously Niagara Falls in Canada. So it was easy. It was only a 3-hour drive or something from Toronto, an hour from Buffalo, an hour and a bit from Pittsburgh. So you have access to a lot of large cities, lots of airports, lots of talent without the cost. So for us, it was very ideally located, very friendly, easy to get around. I can't imagine like living in New York or another big city like that where like parking, you have, I don't think I ever paid for parking in Erie when I was there. So yeah, so it was very affordable and easy to get to. I don't think I ever experienced any gridlock while I was there. It was yeah, really easy to get around. So for us, it was the geography and the cost of living.
Rain, I had it this morning. That one light on Peach Street, I hit the red. I had to sit there the whole.
Oh yeah, I've hit that one too.
Horrific.
Get rid of that one.
Yeah, I think that. So I'm an Erie native, and I think generally we're hard on ourselves. And you know, you folks that live and work in other places, you know, see more of the attraction than we often do. And I think we got to stop being so hard on ourselves. You know, affordability of housing, you know, it's amazing. The universities that we have, it's amazing. The support systems that we have, it's amazing. And we're starting to all pull in the same direction, which is really helpful. And we're starting, you know, Sean, I love your idea of being a maker. That's great. And it's an open palette here. We can, you know, we have opportunities to do whatever we want. And, you know, let's just not be so hard on ourselves, right? People would kill for the real estate that we have here coming from, like you said, Catherine, out west, even Toronto, Rain. I mean, you know, it's expensive there as well. You know, the housing, the opportunities are great. And I think momentum, you know, will continue to build, and we're going to continue to have, there'll be a day when we said, geez, why do we have all these people here now? You know, I remember a day when getting stopped on one light on Peach Street was a traffic jam. Now it's a little bit different, but that'll be okay. That'll be okay.
All right, so we've got some questions in the chat. We got one from Jeremiah Brennan. So what was or will be the deciding factor that gives you the courage to make the jump from your full-time career into pursuing your own full business full-time? Or I guess in China, the opposite.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Rain. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So I experienced this myself. So I was working full-time when I started this company, and the deciding factor was getting that initial, our first customer was AIG. So getting that initial, what do you call it, letter of intent that they're interested really validated that we're onto something. So in that sense, you can kind of picture in your mind that, okay, it's not just an idea, it's going to lead to potential revenue. So that's when when I decided to take the leap. The only downside is you can't focus fully on your startup when you're working full time. So just keep that in mind. If you are working full time and you're going to start something, it's very safe. It's very assuring because you still have your paycheck, and while you're, and it's very exciting because you have this exciting thing on the side. But do keep in mind that if speed is important to whatever you're trying to build, then doing that while you're working full time could be a disadvantage. So it depends, but just keep that in mind.
I mean, Carl, go ahead.
I'm going to be the outlier in this, because I always coach never quit your day job until you're ready, because you have to be realistic, right? Unless you're, like you said, Sean, your mindset is, I'm doing this for reasons other than wanting to eat or drive a car or or live in a house or apartment. What, it takes money to live, right? And so in my instance, I retired and then started a company. So I'm kind of like the least risky of anyone here in terms of, if this fails. And I'm nervous about that. I credit you guys. It takes a lot of guts to go and do what you're doing, and be successful at it. And, it's not for the faint of heart. You have to be really, really committed and go do it. Now, I don't mean to discourage anyone. I just think be realistic about it's, you've heard it said, it's going to take twice as much time and twice as much money as you think. And maybe that's 3 or 4 or 5 times. I don't know what the right number is, but that's real. And you have to be prepared to do that. And mentally, emotionally, all of that. So I'm not discouraging anyone. This is the best job I've ever had, but you have to be realistic with yourself around the financial side.
Yeah, Jeremiah's question, I would say you don't have to jump. To Carl's point, some people don't. I didn't. I built a side project I thought would always be a side project until it developed into my full-time project. Some people do take the leap. They know that, to Rain's point, it's going to take all my time and attention if it's going to succeed. And so I have to give it all that time and attention. I might build a buffer, have a serious conversation with my partner, look at my future, figure out what my runway is, get ready to jump, but, not foolishly, with a plan. It's why it's so dependent on your life. So what will tell you whether or not you have the courage, because that's the other part of the question, like not just how you jump, but like when do you feel confident? For me, it was that a side project had been up and running for a little while and continuing to grow, and that growth was no longer manageable as a side project. Like, okay, that's the point where if the growth were to continue, it would require all my time. The growth has continued. I have really good data to back that up. And so I feel pretty confident making the jump and leaving the position I was in and doing this new thing full time. And just to be clear, with everybody, you can go back. I think I'm probably the only one I know right now no one on the panel, but I've gone back. I just went back into the corporate world. So we built the co-working company. It's up and running. We have staff running it. I trained a new leader, and now I'm back into the corporate world. Will I be there forever? Probably not. And so you can always move back, and typically you come back with a whole host of new experiences. If you start a company, you basically get an MBA. You have to deal with everything you're going to deal with in classes, only there are practical implications, and there's the chance that it pays off. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we're in a moment, right, where both it's easier to start a business than it's probably been for a long time. But the risk is higher given our economic uncertainty. But it it's like it's not a decision to make lightly by any means. Like people always say that, like, oh, if I knew what I knew, would I have done it? Like we still would definitely have done it, but like we definitely didn't. You can't know what you're getting into until you do it. You really can't. Like you're, like the time scale and the amount of commitment and the amount of like emotional and kind of practical energy that you put into it is pretty intense, and money, and your friends' money, and like people you don't know's money, and like it's like you're taking on a lot of responsibility. So I think you got to be honest with yourself, and as we all do, like you can hear it with Carl, like we all feel a huge responsibility for our teams, right? Like I think that's the sign of being an ethical, good business person, is that you care more about your team than you do about yourself, right? And that extends to like your customers too, right? Like you wouldn't be doing this if you didn't really care about what happened. And you know, like it's just a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. So I would, you know, I've done it a couple times in a couple different ways. I definitely recommend it, but it's not for everybody, and that's fine too, right?
I see a couple questions in the Q&A. I'm gonna just tackle a couple of these with like a short answer. I see two marketing questions. I'll just hit on that. My answer for marketing questions are as always, we have to have a conversation about where your customers are. Like the marketing that works best for your company is whatever gets the most important information in front of the best customers. And that's going to be really different for every business. And it's going to be different at different stages in your business. There's a question about kind of loans and capital. You know, Hayden, did you have to take out loans to get your companies to next stage, grown organically? Radius has grown organically. We've never used debt. I mean, other than occasionally putting a couple things on a credit card, you know, to pay off at the end of the month. Radius has never used debt. We grew from 12 people and 2,000 square feet to 150 people, 2 annual conferences, you know, 6 monthly programs, and 150 members and 10,000 square feet, and we never use debt. So you don't have to use debt to grow. Just keep that in mind. But to Brad, to your point, like, yeah, capital was definitely a problem for a lot of our members. Not having kind of seed, and then those that got seed not having kind of Series A has been a challenge in the Erie community. And the people we've seen overcome that either switched to revenue-based growth models, used debt that was accessible, even lines of credit, right? Debt that exists. Or they went outside the community. You know, they changed where they were targeting their growth to be in communities where debt was accessible.
Yeah, I think it's a great response, Sean. For us, we're PS Energy's fundamentally angel-backed startup, and we have one major investor, and we have used line of credit because we do have manufacturing. So, you know, we do use line of credit for that and cover, you know, the gap between our invoicing and our payables, our receivables. And so we have used credit as well. From a funding gap in Erie, I mean, you know, we hear that a lot. The one thing I always try to coach is the best way to fund your business is with customers that buy what you're selling. And that's, I think, what Sean has demonstrated magnificently in his growth story there. Sometimes that's not always possible, but I do think that there are things that are available. But, you know, kind of going back a little bit to the previous, you know, I would be careful before, you know, I'd be really sure before I sign over my house and my car and my, you know, whatever else, to say that, you know, this is a great idea and it's going to go. First, be sure it's a great idea and it's going, and then figure out how you want to grow, at what pace you want to grow.
Yeah, I can touch on this from a startup standpoint. We've done a seed round recently, and you really have to take your company as far as you can with the resources that you can access. And that doesn't necessarily, again, mean taking out loans, government grants, friends and family, love money, as it's called. Investors want to see how far you've taken a company and how resourceful you are. So for us, we've done everything. We've done grants. We've done like AWS, Amazon credits for our servers for a year, where we didn't have to pay for any server costs for a year. Investors look for that. And then as for the funding gap, I guess it's different for a startup, but there's plenty of other places you can look for funding as a startup. So we're a Toronto-based company, but most of our investors are either West Coast, Japan, or Singapore. So there's plenty of capital to access. So if you're looking locally, again, as a startup, you should probably expand where you're looking. And then how you meet these investors is a whole different panel discussion, I'm sure, where it's just like sales. It takes 6 to 12 months. It took us almost a year to close our seed round. So it's not something that happens overnight. It involves a lot of work. It's full time, and then again, you have to prove that you're resourceful. You have to prove essentially that you're going to do what you can as best as you can to not lose the investors' money, because they're giving you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of their money. So you really have to convince them that to part with that money. So all this to say, yeah, if you're a startup, there's plenty of ways to get there. It's just you have to put the time in.
I'll just echo that. I think funding is less, again, this was a trend I think that was in process before COVID, but that COVID has accelerated, is that investors were less focused on funding companies geographically close to them, right? So there's less emphasis on like, and I think this is of course now true with COVID, and it's also a little easier on founders to raise now because we're not having to fly all over for these meetings, right? Like I think we're raising sort of a pre-seed round right now, and like I probably would have spent a lot more time at in-person meetings in a normal year, and so we've been able to talk to people who we might not have been able to reach otherwise. So I do think I agree, like the best funding is not to need funding. There's definitely, that's our goal for this round, is that we won't need any, maybe we'll continue to access it, but that we won't need to get money after this round. But it's hard when you're building a complex SaaS product or a complex hardware product, or you know what I mean? Like it depends on what you're trying to do, what kind of risks you want to take, but being thoughtful about, and I think aligned with your co-founder, or aligned with yourself, I guess, if you're a solo founder, although I would really recommend having a co-founder if you can. I think it eases the burden of being a founder. Just gives you you got to be aligned on the big picture as well as the small details for your company, right? Because you're going to have decisions to make about how you grow, when you grow, who you bring in to your team as investors and staff, all of those things you got to be aligned on. So guys, I apologize. I'm going to have to jump off to right at 3-4, an investor call, surprise. So,
Nice. Luck.
Pat, following it up on that, one thing that I've heard time and again from our portfolio companies that is another feather in Erie's cap is investors find cities like Erie very attractive because their dollars go a lot farther. When you look at what a dollar gets you here versus what a dollar gets you in San Francisco, it's 10, 20x. So they find that very attractive, and that's another benefit to a city like this. So we've got about 2 minutes left. If anyone on the panel has any final thoughts or anything, I'll open that up before I close this out.
Yeah, my one commercial that I didn't give is that you know, we're not all slanted towards the numbers, but if you're going to go out and do a venture, you really need to know your numbers. It's critical. We are very disciplined about closing, you know, 1 or 2 days after the end of every month. I don't know if if that's necessary in all cases, but you really need to know where your money's going and where it's coming from, and you know, where do you stand from a cash perspective? You know, it's shoebox accounting is perfectly fine because it's all about the cash, right? So you don't need some crazy accounting system, but you need to understand your cash. Yeah, that's a big deal.
I would say find a community of peers. Don't try and go it alone. Find a bunch of other entrepreneurs to go to the bar with at the bare minimum, to talk to regularly as peer advisors, and to work alongside. We're going to problem solve with you, because that community of peers, they're really going to hold you up when the times get tough, and they're going to help you find solutions because they've found them before, and they'll be eager to learn from you as well.
All right. Thank you, everyone in the audience for coming, and thank you, everyone on the panel, for giving your time today. It was a great discussion. I appreciate all of you and the insights that you've brought. If you are interested in the panels tomorrow, I highly recommend checking them out. At 12, we have How Entrepreneurs Grow Together in Recovering Cities. And at 5 o'clock, we have Erie's entrepreneurial ecosystem and the resources that come with it. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Great job, Jordan. Thanks, Kathy.